Hello, everyone. My name is Lou Nani, and welcome from the Rex and Alice Media, or Martin Media Center, here in Corbett Family Hall at the University of Notre Dame. And we're thrilled that you've taken time to join us this afternoon or morning, wherever you're turning in from. And we're elated to have with us a very special guest in the new Joseph A. Matson, Dean of the Notre Dame Law School and Professor of Law, Marcus Cole. And so Marcus, you're just finishing your first year as Dean of the Notre Dame Law School, and tell us how things have gone year one into this and what might be some highlights from that first year.
So Lou, the year went exactly as planned. A pandemic hit in the middle of my deanship. No, the first year has been fantastic. The people here are amazing. I'm just constantly impressed by the quality of the students, the quality of the faculty, the quality of the people that I work with all around the university. It's an incredible place, and it's a place that I've always dreamed of being. And I'm still just pinching myself because I'm living a dream. So it's been fantastic. We've had a bunch of highlights. We started a bunch of international programs. We started a Dublin Honors Scholars Program. So some of our top students get to intern with law firms in Dublin, Ireland. We've started a bunch of other partnerships with law schools from around the world. And here at home, we've reinforced our faculty and our colloquium series has become very popular with faculty from all around the country. We just got a call this past week with a Georgetown professor who wanted to get into our faculty workshops. So we've really seen a lively first year. And the pandemic didn't really slow us down either, because we had a really successful shift to online instruction. We were well equipped to handle it, and our students and faculty adjusted to it well.
Yeah. Well, you know, many people viewing today have probably not heard your Notre Dame story. And while you never were a student here at Notre Dame, the story goes back a long way. Maybe you could share a little bit of that story.
Yeah, so I just said that this is a place I've always wanted to be, and that's absolutely true. I grew up a Catholic kid in a large family, 5 siblings in the Hill District in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And you know, we were a poor family, a poor Catholic family. And to help my mom and dad make ends meet, my brother and I sold newspapers in the mornings. And in fact, my mom told us that we had 2 jobs. To sell those newspapers every morning, 7 days a week, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And then on Sunday mornings, we had to serve as altar boys at St. Agnes Church, which was down the hill from where we lived. But in the fall, Sunday mornings, we would rush out to deliver those newspapers before the sun was up, so that we could then run over to St. Agnes and serve as altar boys at the very first Mass. Because if we got that first Mass, we could then go home and watch the rebroadcast of the Notre Dame football games that were played the day before, with Lindsey Nelson doing the play-by-play. And my brother and I lived for those rebroadcast games. And we made a pact when we were little that when we grew up and were able to go to college, there was only one place for us, that we were going to go to Notre Dame. Well, my brother was the worst possible older brother you could have. He was perfect at everything. He was captain of our soccer team. He was president of the student body of our high school. And he was #1 in his class. And when he applied to Notre Dame, I think it was the only school he applied to, he got in. And then years later, when it was my turn to fulfill our pact, I applied and I didn't get in. And I was devastated. So I had to go to my fallback school, which was Cornell University. And I'm glad I went to Cornell, because I met my wife there. I've been married for 32 years. So it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But after Cornell, I did well there. I still had this dream of going to Notre Dame, so I applied here for law school, and I finally got in. But I didn't get financial aid, and I got financial aid at Northwestern, so I had to make a choice that I hope no student ever has to make. If they really want to be here, I want to make it possible for kids
Right.
to be here. So I went to Northwestern for law school, and I'm glad I did that too because I had a great education there. I wound up getting a federal clerkship on the Eighth Circuit with Judge Morris Arnold. And then after that, I went to practice law in Chicago with Mayor Brown, and I did that for 4 years. And then I started doing a lot of writing in the evenings and on weekends that started to get noticed, and I started getting feelers from a bunch of different law schools to think about going into academia. And then I went on the market and I got a job at Stanford. And I was at Stanford for 22 years, and I loved Stanford. I loved everything about it. I loved the faculty, I loved the students, I loved living in California. It was great. But I still came out here for football games. I brought my wife here to games before we had kids, and then after I had kids, this was the first campus I wanted them to see because I just thought that this was the ideal college setting, and I wanted them to compare every other college that they ever saw to this one. And I went interestingly, I went to a law professors conference a couple years ago, 2018, that was organized by Notre Dame faculty, but it was in Washington, D.C. And it was a really interesting experience for me because during this conference, there were about 25 law professors there. You could tell the difference between the Notre Dame faculty when they were presenting their work versus everybody else. And I remember pulling a friend over who's a law professor at University of Pennsylvania, and I asked him, do you notice the difference between the Notre Dame faculty who are presenting and the rest of us? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, you got to see the difference. That these people are really on fire for what they're doing, their work. And you could tell the difference that the mission, that the Catholic mission does to someone when they're presenting their work. And then it was just a few weeks after that, I got a call saying that someone had nominated me for this job. And I looked at my wife, and she knew immediately that if I got this job, I was gonna take it. So I did go through the whole interview process. It was really long, 6 months. But at the end, I got a call from Father John offering me the job. And so before it was announced, I wanted to sit my kids down because they're teenagers. And I knew that Stanford was going to announce it the next day. But I wanted them to hear from us. Because they're teenagers, and if Stanford announced it, they would hear from their friends. So we wanted to sit them down and tell them that I was going to take a new job after 22 years. And we were concerned that they're teenagers, they're going to think, well, what does this mean for me? How does this affect me? But that's not what my oldest son, who was 18 at the time, he said, Dad, isn't it amazing that God has finally given you the thing that you've wanted all your life?
That's pretty amazing, and we are so grateful that God did answer that call, not just for you and your family, but for us, to have you here and to have a son, that oldest son, who said that I know is a football player, I think at the University of Wyoming.
That's right. Yeah.
Right now, student athlete. And then your second son, I know that you had done a lot of brainwashing with the boys along the way about Notre Dame, and he just made his college decision. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so his college counselor sent me an email last fall with the list of schools that he was applying to. His name is Constantine. And he said, these are the schools that Constantine's applying to. So I called Constantine over and I said, I just got your list of colleges, and I noticed that Notre Dame's not on the list. And he said to me, Dad, you've been hyping that place up your entire life. There's no way it could ever live up to the hype. I said, well, you should just at least give it a chance.
Yeah.
Just take the tour, go through the motions. And then if you decide that it's not the place for you, that's fine. I can live with that.
Yeah.
So he came, took the tour, and I was in my office over at the law school. He came back from the tour and he said, Dad, this place is amazing. So he applied early. He got in, and this is where he's coming this fall.
Fantastic.
So I'm very excited. That,
Congratulations.
yeah, and I'm really excited that he accomplished something I never did.
Yeah,
which
well,
is to get in here.
and I've heard people say, people who are graduates, people who have come back to work here, people that have been associated with Notre Dame in many different ways that the greatest way to experience Notre Dame is as a parent.
Well, I'm about to take that trip.
That's right. You're about to embark on that trip a year two. So I heard that in your interview with Father John, that when you were interviewing for the position, that you promised him that there would be one thing that you would deliver during your deanship. Can you share with us what that promise was?
Yeah, I remember it very clearly. I was sitting in his office in the Dome, and I said to Father John that there's one thing about Notre Dame and this opportunity that really excites me, and I hope it excites you as well. And that is that I think that religious freedom, religious liberty is under threat all around the world. And I think that it's a really important issue here in the United States. And these debates are occurring without Notre Dame at the table.
Yeah.
And that can't happen. That Notre Dame has to be at the table and has to be in the conversation, informing the decisions that are being made about religious freedom. So I said to Father John, if you hire me, I promise you that I am going to establish a religious liberty clinic here at the University of Notre Dame, where students who are interested in religious freedom can come and learn about how to fight for and defend religious freedom as the most fundamental right that we have. And they can be trained as lawyers to be able to identify issues of religious liberty and be able to defend religious liberty, not just here in the United States, but around the world.
And you got some big news to that end today, right?
Yes, today I'm very pleased to announce that because of the generosity of Matt and Lindsay Maroon and their family, we are able to announce the establishment of the Notre Dame Religious Liberty Clinic. That gift, that transformational gift by the Maroon family, has enabled us to hire one of the most prominent advocates for religious liberty in the country, an advocate and a scholar, Stephanie Barkley, Professor Stephanie Barkley, who's a very prominent appellate litigator in the space of religious liberty and a prolific scholar on religious liberty. And it's very hard to find somebody who is both a scholar and an advocate who can combine those two facets. And the gift of the Maroon family has enabled us to kick off our Religious Liberty Clinic with one of the most spectacular hires in the history of Notre Dame.
That's fantastic. I know she comes from BYU, but she also had offers from several top 10.
She had an offer from Harvard and an offer to visit at Georgetown this year, and she passed both of those up because what we're building here at Notre Dame, she recognizes has the potential to change the world.
That's fantastic. So you have a broad view of what this Religious Liberty Clinic and the broader initiative could encompass. Right. Give us a little bit of a sense of your vision for the bigger vision for religious liberty.
Yes, so the foundation of it is the concept of religious liberty as a foundational freedom, right? So everyone knows that it's built into it's the very first freedom that's mentioned in the First Amendment of our Bill of Rights in the United States. But it's more than that. It's a human right, and it's under threat all around the world. There are over 1 million Uyghurs in prison in Western China whose only crime is that they worship Allah instead of the head of the Communist Party. There are 13 countries around the world where being an atheist can subject you to the death penalty. So religious freedom and freedom of conscience is under threat everywhere, and it's a life or death issue in a lot of other places. In the United States, it means the difference between being able to live your faith on a daily basis or having to do things that violate your faith. And it's critical that someone actually studies these ideas and issues and then takes action on them. And what I want to do here at Notre Dame is, with our Religious Liberty Initiative, is assemble scholars from all around the world, the top scholars in religious freedom, to have them study and inform the debates on religious freedom in this country, but also to train lawyers in a religious liberty clinic who can address these issues all around the country and all around the world. So one of the things we have to do is we have to attract these scholars not just for the law school, but scholars in other departments of the university. the School of Theology, the philosophy department, political science department. A lot of these issues come up in business settings. So we need to have scholars who have a foot in the Mendoza College of Business as well as in the law school. A lot of the overseas issues regarding human rights would involve the Keough School. So we need scholars who feel comfortably tapping into the resources of this great university with all of these different departments that are top-notch to be able to bring to bear on the issue of religious freedom all of their talents to be able to address and inform the rest of our society. This COVID-19 pandemic is a perfect example. We've had all of these fights all over the country about whether or not states can restrict churches from holding services, but no one is asking the question of how far the state can go or what are the limits to religious freedom. And that's partly because there is no place to turn where these issues are being studied, where someone can articulate principles about the limits of religious freedom or the limits of state action. Notre Dame ought to be in that discussion and taking leadership over these issues so that when they arise, people will know where to turn for the answer to these tough questions.
Well, thank you for your vision. Thank you to Matt and Lindsay Maroon for making this transformational gift to get us started down this path. And then, congratulations on this wonderful new hire to lead this initiative and to start to put it into action. So we're really excited about where this will go. Let me ask you in a slightly kind of different direction. The recent acts of, horrific acts of racial violence have summoned up to the forefront what has been a long-standing issue of systemic racism in this country and is brought in a very palpable way emotions to new kind of high points in the country. This goes to a fundamental question of human rights as well. In response to all of this, you wrote a brilliant essay, and if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, I really encourage you to look at it. The essay is entitled, "I Am George Floyd, Except I Can Breathe, and I Can Do Something." It's not just only kind of an accounting of your story, and how directly in your family as a son and also as a father, you've experienced these acts in a forceful way, but you also talk about a plan of action, a kind of 3 steps that you'd like to implement and at the law school. And then I ask all of us, what are 3 things you can do? Can you tell us a little bit about that essay and anything you'd like to highlight to that end?
Yeah, so I wrote the essay in large part because I think there are a lot of people out there that think that the clash between the black community and police forces around the country is due to the fact that people aren't obeying the police or people aren't doing the right things or people who are bad actors are having encounters with the police. And what I want to let people know through this essay is you don't have to have done anything wrong. Right. You don't have to be what we think of as a bad person or as a criminal to have violence visited upon you at the hands of just random citizens or the police. And so I give 2 examples in the essay of situations where we did nothing wrong, and yet my father was beaten almost to death, on the verge of death, and was put in a hospital and disfigured for the rest of his life.
In front of you and your 2 sisters.
In front of us when we were little children in Pittsburgh. And I also gave an account years later of when I was a father with my 2 sons in the car, of a police officer who pulled me over without telling me why he pulled me over and basically abused me for about a half an hour in front of my kids. And the thing I kept thinking to myself the whole time was that this can really escalate very easily. And the most important thing I can do for my children is to survive this. And I was very scared that I wasn't going to survive it. So I
It was a
thought
pretty humiliating
it's
experience.
incredibly humiliating and emasculating,
Yeah.
and especially for your young sons who depend upon you and look at you
Right.
as their protector,
Right.
to see you in a situation where you can't protect them,
Yeah.
and where you can't even defend yourself. And it was very clear that the police officer was trying to provoke a violent response from me, and yet I had to keep my mouth shut,
Yeah.
and I had to keep my hands to myself, because the worst thing that could happen is that he would have an excuse to take it further
Right.
in front of my kids. And so I've always wondered about what psychological scars that left on my kids. And the point of the essay was that you don't have to have done something wrong to have this happen to you.
Yeah.
And we can't continue as a society like
Right.
that. So I wanted to write an essay not where I'm passing judgment on what happened with George Floyd, but to suggest to people that we need to think about what kind of world we want to live in, and what we as individuals can do about it. And so I decided to articulate 3 things that I thought were important. And those 3 things to me come right out of my relationship with Notre Dame, actually. Because as a kid growing up, I was completely captivated by Father Hesburgh. To me, Father Ted was an ideal leader. And I'm full of Father Ted quotes. Anybody who runs into me knows that. But the thing about Father Ted with regard to civil rights was that he was one of the key leaders in this country for civil rights until he was essentially fired by President Nixon. And then he came back here to Notre Dame to start the Center for Civil and Human Rights. And over the years, his vision of continuing his work in civil rights has slowly morphed into a focus on human rights. So now today in the law school, we have a program, the LLM program, where we bring lawyers from all around the world to train on how to address human rights issues back in their home countries.
Right.
But it doesn't address civil rights or human rights issues here in the United States. And that was Father Hesburgh's original vision for the law school.
Right.
So I want to reinvigorate, as my very first step in the things that I can do
Yeah.
to make this world a better place, is to reinfuse the law school with Father Hesburgh's vision of not just training human rights lawyers, but civil rights lawyers. And I want to be able to fully fund lawyers who want to study how to address issues of civil rights as well as human rights. The second thing I can do, I said in the essay, is to take in JD students who've committed their careers to pursuing civil rights and train them to be the best possible lawyers, Notre Dame lawyers, and then send them out into the world to pursue their goal of being a force for good in the world of civil rights. And then the third thing that I thought we could do here at Notre Dame, with the help of our faculty and our benefactors, is to establish a wrongful convictions clinic, what we call the Exoneration Project, that was actually started by students at the law school to help those who are essentially victims of prosecutorial misconduct and police abuse and have now found themselves in the criminal justice system to prove their actual innocence. And this project has been very successful, so successful, in fact, that we've decided that we're going to turn this into a clinic and train students to be able to help people in that situation. Now, those are just the first 3 things that we can do.
Right.
And there is a big issue of criminal justice reform in this country, and we need to stop, while it's important that we help prove the actual innocence of people who've found themselves in the system, we need to stop them from getting into the system in cases where they don't belong in the system in the first place, because trying to get them out is much harder than just stopping the abuse in the first instance.
Right.
So I think it's important that we do all of those things. But then I end the essay by saying that's what I can do with my position and my training and my education and my relationship with this law school and this university. What can you do? Just think of the 3 things that you can do to make the world a better place. And the one thing that all of us can do is to surround ourselves with people who are different from us.
Right.
People who not just have a different skin color or come from a different background or country, but also people who think differently than us. I think one of the biggest problems we have right now in this country is political polarization, and we need to be able to have conversations with people who don't agree with us about things. And that will make this country a better place. That'll make the world a better place if we can, each of us, make a commitment to diversity, not just with regard to race, but with regard to every aspect of our lives.
Well, thank you for the courage that it took to put pen to paper, and that essay hit home for so many of us, because I know myself and many others are talking about what are the 3 things that I can do. And for each one of us, there may be a lot of similarities, but there's some differences in the ways that we can contribute. So, and we're also going to really work to help you further your vision for the Religious Liberty Initiative, but also on the Exoneration Project and bringing more civil rights minded attorneys to Notre Dame so that we can train them better to protect our citizenry and global citizens as well. So thank you for that vision. A couple questions that come to us from members of the viewing audience here. This question is from a Soren Society member who is a double domer, Paul Lewis, class of '83, undergrad, and a Notre Dame law, who lives in Arlington, Virginia. And he says, what training would you recommend for local police officers with regard to the use of force?
So I think it's a great question, but unfortunately, I think the issue of the use of police force is not a question of training. It's really a question of who it is we're bringing into the police force. Now, my wife's family is full of law enforcement people. Her brother's an FBI agent. Her other brothers served as a Cook County prosecutor at 26 in California for 20-something years. Her father was a housing law enforcement officer. So we come from a law enforcement family. Most of the people who go into law enforcement want to serve their communities. They want to serve society. But I firmly believe that there are people who go into law enforcement because it gives them a license to exact power and punishment on people that they don't like. And no amount of training is going to take that away. We need to have better screening of the people who are going into law enforcement, that they're going in for the right reasons. And we also need to have accountability for the ones who've shown us that they're in law enforcement for the wrong reasons.
Great. The next question is from a Baden Guild member, Steve Kelly, who's a '94 Notre Dame Law School alum from Seattle, Washington. And Steve asks, I had a classmate at Notre Dame Law School who was black, and upon receiving his dream offer after law school 25 years ago, he told me that he was depressed because he feared they gave him the job due to a racial quota. He feared his colleagues would see him as someone who didn't earn the job. The specter of race diminished even his greatest achievement. It opened my eyes as to the burden that is so strong as to eat into our dreams fulfilled. How do we address this?
So this is a common issue in every black family for sure, and it's probably true in other families as well. My parents had a conversation with me when I was a small child. I had the same conversation with my 2 sons when they were small children. The fact of the matter is that as long as people are going to see your race, they are going to make assumptions about your abilities or your inabilities. And it's not your problem to dwell on why they're doing what they are doing. But if you get an opportunity, you need to seize it, and you need to make the most of it. And that's your opportunity to either prove them right or prove them wrong. And so I have always viewed every opportunity the way my parents told me to view it, which is when that door opens, you don't just walk timidly through it. You burst through it, and you show them that not only do you belong here, but that you are the best at what you're doing, that there is nobody that they would rather turn to in a crisis or to complete a task or a job than you. And the only way you're going to get to show that is by taking advantage of the opportunity. So you shouldn't be shy about it, shouldn't be depressed about it. You take that opportunity and you burst through that door.
Yeah, that's great counsel, I think, for everybody, because all of us have doors that are open to us for different reasons. We might know somebody might put in a good word for us, but it's what you do with the door that's open that makes all the difference. So that's great counsel. We're a little less than 8 weeks away from beginning a new school year, and for you, your second year as dean. What are your hopes and expectations for year 2?
So my number one hope for year 2 is that we have a safe school year.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone comes up with a vaccine for the coronavirus, or whether or not there are treatments for it, we have to take the steps that keep our community safe.
Right.
But I really believe in this place, and I believe that there's a value to us having face-to-face instruction for our students. That there are lots of ways students can learn law, and they can learn it online, but it's harder to transmit values online. And what I mean by being a different kind of lawyer is harder to communicate online than it is to show by example and by the way you carry yourself and by the way you interact with people on a day-to-day basis. And so my hope and goal, my prayer for this year is that it's a safe one, and that we can successfully complete the school year on this campus, because I think that's important.
Great. When we first met, I asked you a question about just something you just referenced, how a Notre Dame lawyer, a Notre Dame law grad, would be different, and how does that fit into your vision? And you shared a story with me, as you often do in your answers, a great anecdote. Would you mind sharing with the group your vision for how a Notre Dame lawyer will be different?
Yeah, well, anybody who knows me knows that I have an affection for Catholic churches. My brother's a Catholic priest, and I like to visit Catholic churches when I travel around the country. But there's a really special Catholic church to me. It's Christ the King Parish in San Diego, California. It's a very poor parish. It always has been. And I learned a story about it before visiting it. And this happened back in the 1980s. The parishioners wanted to erect a statue of Christ the King in front of the church, but it was a poor parish, so they had to save for years. They had bake sales and collections, and over the years they assembled enough money to commission a statue of Jesus for the front of the church. And when they were able to finally erect the statue, they had a big fiesta for the unveiling and a big celebration. And so they erected the statue, they had it covered with a veil, and at the end of the fiesta, they unveiled the statue of Christ the King, and everyone was happy. But the very night after the unveiling, the statue was vandalized. Someone spray painted graffiti over the body of Christ, and someone had taken a hammer and broken off the hands of Christ. And the community was devastated when they discovered the damage the next day. And so they did what they could. They cleaned off the graffiti, but it took them years to save the money for that statue. There was no way that they could replace it or even repair it. So the priest, Father Robert Fabrini, Father Robert Fabrini came up with an idea. He took a poem from Saint Teresa of Avila and took some of the words from it and put up a plaque at the base of the statue. And the statue's still there to this day, and the plaque is still there to this day. I just visited it just a few months ago. And the plaque says, "I have no hands but yours." And to me, that's what a Notre Dame lawyer is. We can go out and we can practice securities law and corporate law, litigation, whatever. But at the end of the day, the core of our being is that we are lawyers who are trained to be of service to the world, to be a force for good. We are God's hands in the law. We're God's lawyers. And to me, that statue represents what it means to be a different kind of lawyer. God is telling us, I have no lawyers but you.
Well, I think it's providential that you're here and that you're here now at Notre Dame. We're really blessed to have you as the Joseph A. Matson Dean of the Notre Dame Law School. And I know for one, and I know many out there want to do everything that we can to help fuel your passion and your vision to make the Notre Dame Law School relevant to people who are in need throughout this country and throughout this world. And we'll do all that we can to support you. So thank you for the discussion today. And I'm going to come back to you but next week I want to share that at the same time, the same place, on Wednesday at noon, we will be joined by another new academic leader here at the university, Heather Reynolds, who is the managing director of the Wilson Sheehan Lab for Economic Opportunities. And she's going to talk a little bit about all the work that they're doing to analyze the efficacy of anti-poverty initiatives throughout the country. It's a wonderful program. You'll want to tune in. But as we always close here, I'd like to ask Dean Marcus Cole if there's any words you'd like to say beforehand by way of prayer, please feel free to do so. And then if you'd lead us in closing with a Hail Mary.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, Lou, and I really appreciate the blessing of being at Notre Dame. And so I will begin our prayer with the Hail Mary. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
God bless. And know that a candle burns for all of you, for your safety, and for your families as well. Take care. God bless. Thanks.